Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us and welcome actually to the CPA webinar on how to complete a change of job assessment. My name is Pam Lipovsky. I'm an officer with the Employer Relations team at CPA Ontario. Before we get started, please note that if you wish to ask a question during the webinar, you can use the questions button in your GoToWebinar control panel. Writing your questions here will send them to us and we'll be able to answer them for you. If we don't get to your questions, please don't worry. They will be answered individually after the webinar. So we're going to basically cover practical experience requirements, when to submit a change of job request or assessment request, and of course the majority of our session today will be walking you through a demonstration of how to complete a job assessment request. Okay, students are required to submit a change of job assessment request in the Practical Experience Reporting tool, which we refer to as PERT, when their job changes. The request has to be submitted within 90 days of the date of the change, and that's your responsibility when you change your job to go in and update your profile and make that change. Please note that your practical experience will not be approved if the information is not submitted. Very important reminder that you must complete 2 mentor reviews for every 12 months of current experience. Okay, so if you haven't completed your 2 mentor reviews, you will lose duration. Okay, so let's get into a little bit more detail as to when you need to submit a change of job assessment request. So when you're terminating employment with your current employer, if you are changing roles at a current employer, so for example, if you're going from external audit to tax, so you're changing rotations. If you are changing office locations within a pre-approved program, so your job is changing, but your job is the same, but you are moving physical locations. And it's important to note that you are not required to submit a change of job request if you are being promoted within your own role. So for example, you're going from an assistant manager of audit to a manager of audit. So keeping all those things in mind, we're going to walk you through a demonstration of the change of job assessments, and Taj is going to walk you through that.
Hi everyone, so I'm going to complete a brief demonstration and I will present 2 scenarios. So first we will submit a change of job assessment for a student reporting in the experience verification pathway, and after I will proceed with another demonstration on how to submit a change of job, but this time for a student in the pre-approved pathway. So I'm going to first log into my CPA Ontario PERT account. Now, I'd like to point out a couple of things before we start reporting our change of job assessment. Note that my per effective date is March 15th, 2017. If I started my current role before my per effective date, then I will need to also create a prior experience report to capture any experience gained before the per effective date. So before you can request a change of job assessment, you have to make sure that you have submitted the right reports with the right duration. I'd also like to point out that this report on the screen that I've highlighted that has a status of reviewed is the pre-assessment report. Now moving forward, we're going to submit a change of job assessment for this particular student. So in this case, let's assume that the start date for this role was March 15th, 2017, the same day as the per effective date. Again, if the student worked, the employment start date was before the per effective date, they would have to create a secondary prior experience report. So what the student should be doing is they should be filling out the Report Details tab. This is the tab that contains information about the employer and supervisor. So the student would indicate their position title, their employer, the start date, end date, whether it's permanent, temporary, contract, the average hours. I'd also like to point out the supervisor verification field. So the student has to indicate the supervisor's first and last name along with the supervisor email address. If the email address is not a corporate email address, the file will be flagged and students will need to provide additional information as per their documentation. So when the student is ready to submit their change of job assessment, they must fill out all of the technical subcompetency areas that are specific to their role. Again, I'd like to repeat that are specific to their role. Any areas where they don't have exposure, the student does not need to fill out. So I have gone into the financial reporting subcompetency area. As a controller, I would normally focus on the financial reporting, maybe management accounting areas. Tax and assurance are not areas that would apply to me in my current role. So what I would do is I would fill out the technical subcompetency areas that are related to my role specifically. I would need to provide a description of my job responsibilities. I would need to assign a self-assessed proficiency. Now, if you're unsure about the level of proficiency you should assign yourself, always refer to the blue question mark icon next to each subcompetency area. So as you can see here, for financial reporting needs and systems, there is a rubric that clearly indicates which level of proficiency you should select based on your overall responsibilities. Now, once you have filled out the technical subcompetencies, you would save each section. After filling out the technical subcompetencies, you would fill out the Enabling Competencies tab where you have the related and relevant experience. It is important to note that for your enabling competencies, you should be at a level 2 proficiency for all 5 enabling competency questions at the end of your 30 months. There is also a Notes tab where the student can enter any notes they feel are relevant to their particular report and attachments. Now, the student can upload a resume, a job description, additional information. These are not mandatory, so the student does not have to upload these documents, but they can always provide supplemental information. When the student is ready to submit, they will go to the Report Details tab, and as you can see, there is a Submit link. So as you can see here, there's a pop-up that appears, and the pop-up is asking whether or not you've attached the job description and have you had a discussion with your supervisor. Now, the second point is important to note because it's always good to have an understanding as to what you are reporting and whether your supervisor would agree or disagree with what you have reported. Because when you submit your report, it does have to go to your supervisor for sign-off. So it's always good to make sure that you and your supervisor are on the same page. Now, I'd like to point out that the status of this report has changed to verification requested. What that means is that it has been sent to the supervisor's email address that you've specified on the report. The supervisor will then be asked to complete and review this particular report and submit it for sign-off. Once the supervisor has completed the sign-off and submitted the report, the status of the report will change to verified. So I'm going to fast forward and show you that the status of this report has changed to verified because the supervisor has signed off. Once my experience reports have been set to verified, I can then go to my main PERT profile page and request a profession assessment. So what I'll need to do is go to the Profession Assessments tab, and I'll be able to request a profession assessment. One point I'd also like to make, before you request a profession assessment, please ensure you've completed your mentor reviews on a timely basis. Students that have reported 12 months of current experience must complete and document 2 mentor reviews. So, for example, if upon submitting your change of job assessment, you are reporting 18 months of current experience, you would have to have 3 mentor reviews completed. Now, when you go to the Profession Assessment tab, you should be able to request a profession assessment. Just bear with me as our system is loading. I'd also like to point out that if you don't complete mentor reviews on a timely basis, you will be penalized. Students that miss 1 mentor review for every 6 months will be penalized 30 days of duration. So, for example, if you were supposed to complete 3 mentor reviews but you've only completed 1, you've missed 2 mentor reviews and therefore you would be penalized 60 days. So instead of 30 months of qualification, it would take 32 months to qualify to meet your practical experience requirements. So when you click on the Profession Assessment tab, there should be a Request Assessment link. I'm just waiting for it to load. Perfect. Okay, so you can see here that the Request Assessment link is available. Now, there's a drop-down menu and the student is being asked, what is the assessment reason? So for change of job, you would select change of job. You would check off the declaration box and you would hit create. Now, once you've done that, this profession assessment request comes to CPA Ontario for review. Typically, a profession assessment takes 6 weeks to review upon submission or resubmission. Now, that's the process for an experience verification student. I'd like to point out that once a student's experience verification change of job assessment has been approved, they will receive an email. At that point, the student will be set to unemployed, and they will then be required to update their profile. If a student is going from experience verification and in their new role, they're moving on to another role in the experience verification stream, what they would need to do is submit a pre-assessment for their new role. If a student is switching from experience verification to the pre-approved pathway, once their change of job assessment is approved, they would update their profile and indicate that they're working in a pre-approved pathway. Now I'd like to complete another demonstration, but this time this would be for a student that is submitting a change of job assessment in the pre-approved pathway. So this particular student is in the pre-approved pathway, and you can identify this by going to the profile link in the left-hand navigation. The student is working in the pre-approved program, and they are ready to submit a change of job assessment because they are leaving the firm. So what they would do is they would go into the report they have created. Again, if the employment start date is before the per effective date, they will need to create a separate prior experience report to capture any experience gained before the per effective date. Students can claim up to 12 months of prior experience for positions that ended within the last 5.5 years. Now, the student has to fill out the experience report. I'd like to point out that they go to the technical competencies, and for a student in the pre-approved pathway, the competencies have been mapped out. So what they would need to do is enter the self-assessed proficiency that they have obtained for this reporting period. Note that the target proficiency is the level of proficiency you should be at the end of your 30 months or the end of your rotation. Therefore, your self-assessed proficiency value should never be higher than the target proficiency value. If you are unsure as to what level of proficiency you should be assigning yourself, please always refer to the blue question mark icon. Again, there will be a rubric that will provide information as to what constitutes a level 0, 1, and 2. The student will need to fill out any self-assessed proficiency column where there is a target proficiency entered. If you don't have any experience, you would select level 0. Once you have filled out the technical competency section, you would save all of the responses and you would go to the enabling competencies. You would fill out the applicable questions where you have the relevant experience, and again, you would assign yourself a self-assessed proficiency. If you are unsure as to what level of proficiency you should assign yourself, please refer to the blue question mark icon. Once you have filled out the report, you would go to the Report Details tab to submit the report. So as you can see here, the Submit link is right under Report Details, and you would click on Submit. I'd like to point out that as a student in the pre-approved pathway, when you submit the report, it automatically goes to a status of verified, meaning that it does not go for supervisor verification. The reason being is the verification is completed at the time you request the assessment. So the student in this case has filled out the technical and enabling competencies, has submitted the report. Before they can request a profession assessment, the student should make sure that they have documented sufficient mentor reviews. For every 12 months of current experience, the student needs to document 2 mentor reviews. Mentor reviews are not completed for prior experience reports. Again, if the student does not complete mentor reviews on a semi-annual basis, they will be penalized 30 days of duration for every missed mentor review. I'd also like to point out that if you are a student in a pre-approved program and you're working in the external audit stream, please make sure to also attach the chargeable hours form to your report, specifically in the Attachments tab. When you are ready to submit your profession assessment, you will go to the Profession Assessments tab and you will be asked to submit a profession assessment. Again, before you request a profession assessment, please make sure you've documented your mentor reviews, as well as attaching any forms you are required to submit, especially the chargeable hours form if you are in external audit. If you're in tax or in assurance, you are not required to submit this form. So by going to the Profession Assessment tab, you'll see that there's a Request Assessment link. Again, for the assessment reason, you would select Change of Job. Now, the difference is that in this case, a pre-approved student would also have to select the program leader. The reason being is when you request a profession assessment, it goes to the program leader of the organization, the pre-approved program, for sign-off. And once they've signed off, then the assessment comes to CPA Ontario. Again, the processing time for change of job assessments is 6 weeks from the time we receive the sign-off from your program leader. So once you have submitted your profession assessment, and this is for students in the pre-approved pathway, your program leader will receive an email notification and be asked to sign off on the assessment. Until then, the status of your assessment will be certification requested. When the program leader has signed off on the assessment, the status of the assessment will change to assessment requested. And once the assessment has been assigned for review, the status will change to required. Once CPA Ontario has approved your change of job assessment, you will be set to unemployed. Now you have 2 options. If you are moving on to a new role and it's part of the pre-approved pathway, all you need to do is update your profile, change it from unemployed to pre-approved program, and you would select the pre-approved program organization that you are working in and start to report your practical experience. If you have changed jobs and you've left the pre-approved organization and your new role is in experience verification, once your change of job assessment is approved and you are set to unemployed, you have to update your profile to indicate that you're working in the experience verification pathway and submit a pre-assessment for your new role. Now I'm going to hand it over back to Pam, and she'll continue with her presentation.
Okay, thanks, Taj. So we've got the questions coming in. So before we move forward, is there any questions? We've got a bunch of people assisting us here answering questions. Are there any questions that anyone wants to share? No? Amanda?
I don't know if Taj wants to do a demonstration, but somebody's asking, how do I submit a pre-assessment in PERT? Do we want to do a quick demonstration on how to do that? Yep, we can do that.
So just to reiterate what Amanda's saying is the person's question is how to submit a pre-assessment in PERT, and Taj will walk us through.
Okay, so I'm just going to update some things on the back end before I can show how a pre-assessment is done. Now, the purpose of the pre-assessment is basically to determine if you're working in a qualifying role. And if the pre-assessment is approved, only then can you start reporting your experience. So if you can just bear with me, I'm going to update my profile. Just going to show you what this will look like. So suppose my change of job assessment is approved. As you can see here, CP Ontario will set my status to unemployed. We will send you an email notification as well. Now at this time, if I'm now working in the experience verification pathway, I'm going to submit a pre-assessment. Before I can submit a pre-assessment, I have to update my profile. What I'm going to do is click on the profile link in the left navigation bar. I'm then going to click on Edit. What I'm going to do is update my pathway. I'm going to switch it from unemployed to experience verification. So in the experience path field, I'm going to select experience verification. If you've changed mentors, you can update it, or if they remain the same, you would just leave it. So as you can see here, I'd like to show you once I've switched and updated my status to experience verification, the status of my practical experience has changed from unemployed to pre-assessment required. Now I can go ahead and submit my pre-assessment. So what I have to do is I have to click on Create New Report. From the drop-down menu, I will select Current, as that is the only value. I'm going to enter my position title, include the employer details. I'm going to indicate my position. Now I'd like to clarify that you can only report experience that is at least 3 months in duration. So if you're on a contract and it's less than 3 months, you will not be able to submit this role for review. I would indicate my start date in the role. You'll notice that the end date has 2 asterisks. Anything with 2 stars or 2 asterisks means that this field is not required at the time you create the report. It is only required when you submit the report. When you are submitting a pre-assessment, all you're doing is creating a report. You don't submit it, so you don't have to fill out anything with 2 asterisks. So again, the employer address, there are 2 asterisks, so it's not required at the time of creation. I will leave that blank for now. But I will have to fill out the employer profile. So this field is asking number of CPAs employed within your organization, the number of employees within your organization, the number of employees within your department. It also asks how many staff do you supervise. If it's 0, you would select 0 or enter 0. And then you would enter your supervisor verification. Again, if you notice, there are double asterisks, so they are not required to create the report. So once I've filled out all the fields, I'm going to hit Create. And this will create the experience report. For the purposes of the pre-assessment, it is extremely important to note that when you go into the report, this is the report we've created for the pre-assessment, you are not going to fill out the technical or enabling. These must be left blank. If you fill it out, the report will be returned back to you where you have to remove them. So again, Once I've created the report, I will not fill out the technical or enabling competencies. I will leave it blank. Instead, what I will do is simply upload an attachment of my current job description. I will do this by going to the Attachments tab. I will upload my browse and then upload my document. I want to point out that the job description must be on company letterhead, so it must be on official company letterhead, and we're often asked what information should I provide. It should be an official document. It should be pretty detailed and specific to your daily, weekly, monthly, overall responsibilities. The purpose of the pre-assessment, again, is to determine if you're working in a qualifying role. So if there is not enough information, if it's only, let's say, 3 or 4 sentences and it's not enough to go by, we would need additional information. So I would say a job description should be about 1 page in length. It should be issued on official company letterhead so that we can review it. Once you have uploaded the attachment, you're going to request your pre-assessment. To do this, you will go back to your main homepage for PERT. You would go to Profession Assessment. Again, before you submit your pre-assessment, make sure that the technical and enabling competencies are left blank. You do not submit the report. The report status remains in you. All you need to do is create the report and attach an official job description in this report through the Attachments tab. The turnaround time, again, for pre-assessments is also 6 weeks. And you will receive an email once your pre-assessment has been reviewed. Once your pre-assessment has been reviewed, you can then begin to report subsequent practical experience. But until then, you cannot report any experience. I'd also like to point out that when you submit the pre-assessment, duration is not recognized. The purpose of the pre-assessment is to determine if you're working in a qualifying role. When your pre-assessment has been approved, you will need to create subsequent experience reports and request a profession assessment in order to have duration awarded to you. So, now that the student has gone to the Profession Assessment tab, they will click on Request Pre-Assessment. And all they'll need to do is check off the candidate declaration box and hit Create. And this pre-assessment request will now automatically come to CPA Ontario for review. CPA Ontario will review the job description to determine if the student is working in a qualifying role. Once the pre-assessment has been completed, the student will receive an email notification with next steps. If the pre-assessment is not approved for whatever reason, they will also receive an email with further information. I will now hand over the presentation back to Pam.
Thank you, Tash. Okay, I hope you found that helpful. Before I move on, are there any other questions that we feel everyone can benefit from?
Here's one. For co-op students, would we be required to report a change of job each time a co-op term is completed?
So yes, the recommendation is every time you complete a co-op, you should actually go in and complete a change of job assessment. We would then put you to unemployed, and then upon coming back to another co-op, you would go in again and update your PERT profile to reflect your current role. The other thing that's recommended is as you complete your co-op terms, it's highly recommended that you also complete your mentor review. So even if you're at a 4-month co-op term, it's highly recommended that you actually have a mentor review with your mentor at that point and include that in your experience report.
Here's another one, not necessarily change of job related, but a good one about mentorship. My previous mentor notified me that he's not able to be my mentor. How can I change my mentor in my profile?
Well, you actually just have to go into your profile, edit, go down to your mentor, and put in your new mentor in there, and then save.
Just want to add that individual has to be approved as a mentor. So
yes, so what has to happen, thank you, Taj. So what has to happen is we have to ensure that your new mentor has actually gone through their orientation and has applied to become a mentor and is already set up in the system. What you may see is when you go in and put in your new mentor, if they haven't gone through that process to become a mentor with CPA Ontario, you will not be able to find their name, so that it won't be populated. So if you see that, you know to go back to your mentor and ask them if they've completed their orientation and have gone through the process of becoming a mentor. Any other questions? No?
Is there a fact sheet or resource available on the website to help me outline these steps?
Okay, well that's going to walk us right through into my next part of the presentation, which is helpful resources. So I've got a couple of things on here. The first one is the video for the technical competencies. I'm not going to open it for you, but you have it. I've attached the presentation actually to the webinar, so please feel free to go in there and have a look. But it's also within our CPA Ontario website. We highly recommend that you go in and have a look at the technical competencies, and what the supplemental guidance video does is actually walks through what do each of these technical competencies do. So we talked about the difference between financial reporting and management accounting, which is a big one for our students, and so it'll help you with that. The other video that we are providing is the enabling competencies, and again what that does will walk you through what does enabling competencies look like, what are examples of proficiency level 0, 1, and 2, what are the types of responses that you need to be providing in order to obtain the proficiency level that you're looking for. But what I do want to do is I actually could go into the website, but I've actually got this here, so let's see if I can open this. Of course it's not letting me, let's see. Nope. Yeah, are we in?
Just loading.
We're just loading. Okay, so we're in the website under student resources. So what you would do is go to CPA, become a CPA. You would go under completing your designation, and then under that it would say student resources, which I've already just gave you the link to. You would then scroll down and you can see all kinds of neat things in here. Have a peek while I'm in here. Then you could actually go in here and update your account, your student profile, change of legal name. Here's your access to the experience reporting tool. Okay. Career services, there's information on that. Anyways, I'm going to scroll right down. So here's some forms for the students. So again, that's just some options for you. But what I want to go down to is practical experience resources. And you're going to see there's all kinds of resources here available for you, which are like fact sheets. So they're sort of one-pagers. They walk you through what the steps are that you need to, for example, qualifying for EV, this mentorship program. But what we're going to focus on here is the change of job experience. And what we've done is we've actually created 4 separate fact sheets because you're all in different situations. So we didn't want you to have to go through one document that covered all 4 areas. So to make it a little easier for you, we created 4. One of which is what I think Taj walked you through, which is a change of job and experience verification. So you're going from EV to EV. One is a change of job in the pre-approved program, again going from pre-approved to pre-approved. The other one is a change of job from an EV student, so you're going from experience verification to a pre-approved program, and then the opposite, change of job from PPR to EVR, so from pre-approved to EVR, okay? So I'm just going to open up one of them just to give you a flavor of what it looks like. Let's see if I can make this bigger. There we go. Okay, so it walks you through the steps and actually walks you through our presentation a little bit. So it says, basically here's the high level of change of job experience. It tells you when you need to submit a change of job, and then it gives you the details, kind of like what Taj walked you through on how to submit the instructions. And it does specifically walk you through this exact scenario. So complete the following steps to become part of your new PPR roster. So you edit your PERT profile to a pre-approved program. You update your organization location program. So again, Taj did walk you through this. You add your mentor, and you create an initial experience report, including your job start date, your employment type. So are you a co-op student? Are you a full-time student? Are you a part-time student? And then, of course, we're giving you even further guidance that you could actually go into specifically pages 8 to 12 of the PERT user guide for further guidance, okay? If you have any questions at all relating to change of job, you can certainly email our practical experience at cpaontario.ca email. Okay, so again, that is available for you, you can just simply go in and pull off the fact sheet or have a review of the fact sheet that actually applies to you. Okay, so that is actually the end of our webinar for today. I want to just thank you so much for joining us, and I really hope that you found the session beneficial, and we've got all kinds of people here answering all of your questions. So please keep in mind, we will get to all of the questions. They will be sent to you if you haven't heard from us yet. Okay, so so what we'll do, I think, is we will leave the webinar open probably for another 15 minutes or so to continue to ask the questions. So please continue to do so. We're going to continue to answer them. We are here till 1 o'clock. And then again, if something comes up after the fact, please feel free to email our practical experience box. Okay? Thanks so much, everyone.